Most Canadian lakes remain frozen for all except a few months of the year. This doesn't really seem to be the type of environment one would associate with reptiles and amphibians much larger than frogs. And yet, across this country, there's a strange fascination with sea monsters and other creatures. Legends and tales abound of encounters with frightening dinosaur-like animals living in Canadian lakes and rivers. This program is about one such beast, affectionately known as Manipogo. The date was 1960. A group of picnickers were on a beach at the north end of Lake Manitoba near the town of Tutade. Children were playing in the water while their parents watched from the beach. Suddenly, one of the children screamed and everyone looked toward the water. There was something in the lake.
And all of a sudden, everybody started yelling, get the kids out of the water, and all the, the mothers and fathers came out running, grabbed all his kids and ran out onto shore. And there were other people that, had guns, I guess, that were there. And they started shooting at them.
What did they see that day, and what do people continue to see in Lake Manitoba?
The head part was above the water, probably between 1.5 feet and 2 feet, roughly, at the distance that we were from it. And it was making quite a noise in the water when it was swimming.
It was a big thing. It looked like a great big log. But we seen it just maybe, where we were from, like where we were looking from, it looked like maybe about 5 inches above the water.
It was definitely not a fish, and it was not a log. It was something moving through the water.
There is something special about Manitoba's lakes and rivers. They have an added attraction, something that Manitobans claim as their own.
Every sighting of this thing over the years, and like there's been so many different sightings that you hear about, every time people see it, they describe it in the same way. At the head of a horse, and the numerous humps on its back, and it just does the same thing all the time. It swims for a while and then it just disappears.
Yeah, it was basically a very smooth body. There was no fins or anything,
The other night there was 10 of us kids sitting around eating a burger at the beach. And I don't know why, but we started bringing up the Manipogo monster. It was quite funny. They said they seen it or something like that. Nobody'd believe them. And it was just coincidental. That's why a lot of kids don't go swimming at night, is because of that supposed monster.
Around the world, many lakes and waterways are said to have their own mysterious denizens of the deep, such as the one supposed to be in Loch Ness. But few people know about Manitoba's own lake monster, Manipogo. It is named after its cousin Ogopogo, said to inhabit Lake Okanagan in British Columbia. Manipogo has been seen in several Manitoba lakes. The first recorded sighting of Manipogo was in 1909. A fur trader named Valentine Mackay was near Graves Point on Lake Manitoba when he saw a large creature swimming offshore. He said its dark body glistened and it held its head a full meter out of the water as it swam slowly out of view behind an island. Ever since then, fishermen and local residents have said they have encountered something mysterious in the lake.
Approximately 12 years ago, I was out anchored in a canoe just offshore here at the Delta Marsh, still fishing for perch with a friend of mine. And we'd been fishing for about an hour or so. And we were just kind of drowsing in the summer sun. It was a very calm day. And at the same time, we both heard an odd splashing noise. We thought it might have been a bird or a pelican or something fishing, as they are in this area. And we turned and looked at the source of the sound, and we saw something moving through the water. It appeared to be about the same shape as a giant sausage, if you will, approximately 8 or 10 inches in diameter, and the part we could see was about 6 feet long. And it appeared to roll through the water, and the wave going over it was making the splashing sound that had first caught our attention. We watched it for a number of seconds, and we couldn't really see any swimming motion, such as you would expect from a garter snake in the water. But we both looked at each other and kind of in disbelief, and kind of said, well, to each other, did you see what I saw? Or, yeah, I think I saw it too. Neither of us really wanted to say that we had seen something. But it was just offshore here, approximately 100 feet or so, and it surfaced between us and the shore and moved in a straight line towards the shore, and then just basically sank out of sight. And it was definitely not a fish, and it was not a log. It was something moving through the water.
Although most sightings were in the 50s and 60s, sightings of Manipogo continue into the present. In the summer of 1990, several people were fishing in their boats just offshore from Manipogo Beach, waiting for the fish to bite.
And I heard this noise, and I kind of looked up. I said to my husband, I said, what the hell is that? And it was making an awful noise like water hitting against a bank or something, shh, shh, like that, you know. And he says, I don't know. He said, so we looked at it for just a matter of seconds, and he turned around and he says, let's start up the boat. He says, go and take a look. And I said, to hell with you, I'm not going close to that.
Not far away, two others heard the commotion.
Bill says, all of a sudden, he says, what's that noise? Listen, you know. So we looked around, and then Bill says, all of a sudden, he says, look at that. What is that over there? So we couldn't figure it out. We watched it, and it was, the head part was above the water, probably between 1.5 and 2 feet, roughly, you know. It didn't appear to be like the shape of a fish or anything because it was pushing the water rather than parting it, you know. And it was creating waves, and that's what made the noise, swishing noise in the water.
The noise it was making, eh? Yeah. Like George said, there is like in water, but you know, if you splashed in the water, on top of the water, it was be kind of a, well, this was a dollar sound. But it seemed like if you were hitting the water, but it was so loud. You know, we were quite a distance away, and still you could hear it. It was kind of scary, eh?
In 1962, two men took the only known photograph of Manipogo near the mouth of the Waterhen River. Taken at a distance of 75 feet, the photograph seems to show a snake-like creature with a hump sticking out of the water. The photograph appeared in newspapers across Canada. Soon people flocked to Manipogo Beach to try and get a glimpse of the creature.
When we first heard about this monster, everybody was excited around here, because it was something, well, big for this part of the country.
The interest was so high because there was so many sightings in such a short period of time that the local radio station, CKDM in Dauphin, I guess they promoted some kind of I don't know if they financed a little bit of a search for that monster that time.
And what was that search about?
Well, they got some divers. You see, local people around believe that the cave up at Steep Rock might have been the monster's lair.
The Manipogo monster, it lives out in that center island there. It's like not really surrounded by anything else. I don't know the name of it, but there's Rock Island and Bird Island. And it's one of those two, I think it's Bird Island that the cave is. And they say that it goes on Rock Island.
So CKDM hired this Salem Fleury, the guy that had seen it quite a few times. He was a guide, acted as a guide, and took the divers and the CKDM crew up there. And they were live broadcasting it during the time the divers were searching for this. They believe the The cave originated at Steep Rock, on the shore of Steep Rock Lake, and ended up under Lake Manitoba somewhere. So the divers were trying to find the entranceway.
And I remember that Sunday, it was a Sunday afternoon, and we didn't have a TV, we just had a radio, and everybody sat around this radio listening to there was Mr. Lafleur was the guide. And I remember we were listening because they were in the cave and they were explaining how they were getting in the cave. And it was great. It was a great story for our little part of the world for the time it lasted.
Despite the dozens of eyewitness observations, scientists are doubtful that such a creature could really exist. Dr. Terry Dick is a zoologist at the University of Manitoba. He's a world authority on the sturgeon, a large fish that was once plentiful in Manitoba. Terry Dick has raised thousands of sturgeon, and he knows their behavior. Does he think that sturgeon could be mistaken for Manipogo?
Absolutely, their shape and the fact that they look shark-like and they have all those bony scutes that make them look dragon-like. Yeah, they've all the features that would make people afraid of them.
Sturgeons can get very large indeed. In 1903, a huge one was caught in the Roseau River near Winnipeg. It was 15 feet long and weighed 400 pounds. Sturgeon can float near the surface of the water and even roll on their backs to feed. Once in great numbers in Manitoba, they practically have been fished out of existence and are now very rare. Dr. Dick is trying to repopulate the sturgeon and remove it from the threatened or endangered list.
They come out of the water, the way they breach, I mean, it'd be a pretty scary thing to see if it's a 70 or 80 pound sturgeon. And a 70 or 80 pound sturgeon is still common there, relatively common.
I've seen pictures of sturgeon, but their head is not thick like that, you know. This was a very blunt type of a head that was out of the water.
I have no idea if it isn't a sturgeon. I mean, I don't think there's anything else it could be, quite honestly, and usually there were sturgeon in those areas, so to me it would be, I would still think it's probably a sturgeon. So that's how I'd have to answer it, because I just don't think there's anything else that big. There's no other freshwater or aquatic organism that big.
Dr. Waldemar Lane is a world-recognized expert on mirages over water. He has a different theory about the monster.
The first thing that comes to my mind is they've been seeing some kind of effect, some kind of mirage or effect of refraction. Mirages do exactly those things that you might expect. If some animal is swimming in the water or some log is floating in it, the mirage can stretch it vertically and make it appear like a monster. Instead of light rays traveling in straight lines, they'll actually travel in curved paths. They'll bend down, and so a light ray could come, for example, from an object in the water, start off upward, and then actually curve back down into an observer's eye. Now, what the observer sees in a case like that, he thinks the light is entering at a straight line, so he thinks he's seeing something much higher than the original source. This is an example of a mirage I photographed in 1980 on Lake Winnipeg. On the right here we see a small boulder. It's perhaps a meter wide on the shore of Lake Winnipeg. On the left is an image of the same boulder. Space of about 2 or 3 minutes, this image grew up from a normal looking boulder as we had here, developed a thin neck, and finally it developed a head like that. All you need is an animal whose head is big enough to see at 500 meters or 1,000 meters, which certainly a deer's head should be easy to see. Bears are pretty happy about swimming across lakes too. And again, the head of a bear might very well appear looking very different. The closest range mirage I photographed at 1,100 meters was under those conditions.
However, even Dr. Lane agrees that this would not account for sightings of the monster at close range.
It was just offshore here, approximately 100 feet or so, and it surfaced between us and the shore and moved in a straight line towards the shore.
Could lake monsters be dinosaurs that have somehow survived all these years? Paleontologist Dr. Bill Preston finds that hard to believe.
It seems very highly unlikely that anything of this sort could occur in Manitoba. We haven't had things like this, like the plesiosaurs and the mosasaurs here, for about 80 million years now. We've had several glaciations in that time, and it's highly unlikely anything could be living. And again, if there is anything, or even a population of such creatures, as there would have to be, we would have certainly would have found remains washed ashore, or the lake is not that deep.
But if Manipogo is a relic or an afterthought from the age of dinosaurs, there's still one big question. What happens to it during the winter? One possibility is that it goes into caves or swims through underground rivers that are thought to honeycomb the interlake. Maybe it hibernates like a frog. We have heard from witnesses and from scientists with some explanations. In our next segment, we'll learn how even if Manipogo isn't real, it's made an impact on Manitoba's interlake community. Real or not, Manipogo is part of Manitoba's history, belonging as much to the Interlake as the Loch Ness Monster belongs to Scotland.
We needed a pin for the municipality, and we looked for something that would promote the area. And I think what we felt would promote the area the most would be the Manipogo Monster.
Also Stevie, Matthew Southern Comfort, Little Richard, the Turtles, and Jerry and the Pace.
At the Manipogo Beach concession stand, you can buy Manipogo burgers.
Here you go, here's your Manipogo burgers.
Thank you. Manipogos seem to be everywhere.
Everybody wanted a T-shirt. I think every member of my family had a T-shirt at one time, and they had pins and hats, and I forget all the stuff they had, but they had a lot of souvenirs. And people bought it because it was the monster, and they believed it was that somebody had seen it. And I suppose I never saw it myself, but probably somebody saw it.
It was interesting, busy. We were busy all day. Worked about 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
But we met so many different people from all over the place. We met people from Germany, Switzerland.
But in recent years, even though sightings of the creature have continued, interest has declined.
It's really died down since then. It's become just a name on the sign at Provincial Park. That's what it's become.
If you don't promote these things, they just die. They're just forgotten. I think people forget the excitement of that day, you know, when everybody came to find the monster. And it was great.
I think stories are a lot more important to people's lives than most Euro-North Americans recognize. Aboriginal people recognize stories as systems of knowledge.
Dr. Pauline Greenhill is an anthropologist at the University of Winnipeg. She says that science, as a system of authority, is often reluctant to take eyewitness stories seriously.
I'm not sure that we should always just assume that because scientists choose in their worldview to be skeptical about the existence of these so-called monsters, that they may not actually exist. And I think of the example of the giant squid, which for some time was thought by scientists to be mythical and fictitious, and it was seen in the North Atlantic and around Newfoundland by a large number of fishers, and these were perfectly competent, able people who were skeptical about their own environment and perfectly able to evaluate what was in it. And the scientists sort of looked at them and said, you know, you peasants, you know, how could you possibly believe in such a thing? Until a giant squid actually washed up on a beach, and the scientists got a chance to take this apart and dissect it, and then they did finally believe it. And so I'm not sure that just because scientists are skeptical that we should always be skeptical about the existence of these creatures. There is as well, of course, the possibility that people aren't telling the truth.
The park ranger, we told him, you know, as soon as we saw him that same day, you know, about this beast, and he kind of laughed and he says, what brand of beer were you guys drinking?
another fish story, the one that got away.
Yeah, so I says, look at it, I says, see that, as soon as that convertible boat comes in, you go out there and talk to them. And they'll probably tell you the same thing. So he did. And we're having breakfast the next morning, casually, and the park ranger come over and he interviewed us and took a statement, and he began to believe it then. We're just out there fishing. We wouldn't go spreading a bunch of lies or anything like that. Fish stories is something a little different than seeing something like this.
Despite the lack of scientific evidence, sightings of the creature continue. In 1993, Gary and Judy Didichuk saw it again.
Me and Judy were fishing, and we spotted something coming in from the north of Manipogo Beach. And it came on the west side of the beach and went right across the bay to the east side of the bay, and came back and then towards the south end of the bay, and then turned around, went back, and just kind of disappeared in the middle of the bay. You know, and it just kind of looked like you could just see humps, you know, steady going in the water, and it was moving too fast actually to be fish spawning or anything like that.
Whether or not anyone believes Manipogo exists, its spirit lives on in the memories of those who have seen it, and it remains a part of the tradition and history of Manitoba.
There's been various occasions there that we've been going across the lake, going out to Snake Island, and I just leave my fish finder on all the time, whether I'm doing wide open or trolling or whatever. And the fish finder would be at like 18 feet of water, and then out in the middle of nowhere it would just go right up to 0, like 1 foot. And you know, you could turn around and go right back and there's nothing there.
There is something bigger than a sturgeon out there. There's definitely something out there, whatever it is.
Fishermen and tourists are convinced that what they saw was not just a mirage or a large fish. Yet there is no evidence that would lead us to believe that Manipogo could have survived all these years without more concrete proof of its existence. It is unfortunate, perhaps, that science can prove something exists given enough evidence, but it cannot prove that something does not exist. People will see Manipogo again, and stories will continue to be told. But until one actually washes up on shore or a lucky fisherman captures one alive, we are left with only the legends of the monster of Lake Manitoba.